This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. This is episode 141. On today's episode, we're going to be discussing what happened with CM Punk and Cody Rhodes in AEW and why that deal fell through, as well as a WWE Hall of Famer gets arrested yet again, and who Chris Jericho had the hardest time working with. And he defends somebody who's usually undefendable. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Strozinski. Also, we're going to be discussing the preview for Extreme Rules, the horror show as it's being deemed. That's taking place this Sunday with WWE. And of course, we're going to discuss the biggest topics and trends. And doing it with me, as always, he's the one. He's the only. He's the glitter machine. He farts rainbows. He's my cousin. He is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
One guarantee, we will not be doing karaoke on this broadcast because this week I got the opportunity to digest SmackDown, digest Raw, AEW, and I just could not believe how poor SmackDown was put together. By and large, a show that really didn't do much of anything, and to have a segment so bad, even the wrestlers that were in it were like, what were we doing? And it really just kind of felt like, hell, we needed something, so we're going to try something absolutely crazy. So in my mind, I just absolutely felt that SmackDown was the worst show of the week, and it just left a bad taste in my mouth. Thankfully, Raw, NXT, and AEW put on much better shows, and I look forward to talking to you this week about all the great happenings in the world of wrestling and an opportunity to compete, previewing Extreme Rules. Going to be a good one this week.
So I want to touch base real quick on that karaoke segment on SmackDown. And for what it's worth, from me, I felt like WWE's presentation this week was totally lackluster. When we were putting our show together, I found it really difficult to come up with good topics for us to really talk about because we've got a go-home show on Raw. Your go-home show for SmackDown is going to be airing tonight, but last week you had this setup, and I don't feel like a lot of stories got moved along here with the WWE product. Now, as far as the karaoke segment goes, when Naomi starts singing Dusty Rhodes' theme song, that was a straight shot at Cody Rhodes. That was WWE, again, trying to play mind games and taking a shot at Cody. And it was because Cody tried to get the rights, the copyrights to that song to preserve his father's legacy. And what WWE did was they fell back on the notion that, because of COVID-19, we were a little bit late submitting paperwork to try to get this trademark back. And the trademark ended up defaulting back to WWE. So again, WWE being extra petty, taking shots at Cody Rhodes, taking shots at AEW. And I think when it comes down to it, I think WWE needs to focus more on its own product and stop wasting its time trying to focus on what AEW is doing. Just do what you do. You know, if you go back to when WCW was around and WWE was in a Monday Night War, forever and a day, WCW was killing Monday Night Raw, just absolutely destroying them. And what WWE did was they just focused on their product. They just, put their foots to the ground and they just did work every single day. And their product ended up outlasting WCW, and their product got better. Just focus on your own product and stop taking these shots or these veiled attempts at throwing shade at AEW. I just wish WWE would focus more on what they've got going on, because they've got a ton of wrestlers. They've got a ton of talent that you're just not seeing them utilized properly. And I think SmackDown's the perfect show. This was a show that I felt a couple weeks ago was moving in the right direction. And now all of a sudden, and I don't know if it's just that Raw takes up so much more time or there's so much effort dedicated to Monday Night Raw that SmackDown is usually the forgotten son. I'm not really sure what it is, but trying to find stuff to kind of talk about from last week's SmackDown is very, very difficult. There was not a whole lot. I mean, honestly, if you look at our rundown sheet for today, The New Day taking on Cesaro and Nakamura is the only thing that we could really come up with. And that's just because Cesaro and Nakamura are finally getting a shot to do a little bit of something, and it's a big deal because they're going up against the New Day. So I think what you have here is you've got something nice because you're utilizing some underutilized talent, but you need to be dedicating more time, more energy into getting these superstars either on TV or giving them more time to help develop their characters and get people invested. And you're just not seeing that with SmackDown. And frankly, there's not a whole lot of that going on with Raw right now either.
Absolutely. Let's just move on from SmackDown. It was a waste, and it was a shame because SmackDown had been building some nice momentum, but that completely unacceptable. You can't have that. So what was your takeaway from Monday Night Raw from what you experienced?
So with Monday Night Raw, I think Raw's kind of in a weird spot right now. Mm-hmm. You've got this go home show that you're trying to put together, and you've got some different storylines going on. And I get what they're doing, trying to build to this Extreme Rules that's going to take place on Sunday. And they're doing it as veiled as the horror show. So it's going to be supposed to be violent, supposed to be gruesome, supposed to be scary. But caught up in all of this, you've got different storylines kind of trying to work their way out. And I feel like a guy like Kevin Owens is a rudderless ship right now. So Kevin Owens has a great WrestleMania with Seth Rollins and ends up getting injured, hurts his ankle. Then COVID happens, and he takes some time away because of everything going on with COVID, and he has kids. He wants to protect his kids. On top of all that, he's from Canada, so he's locked down in Canada, can't cross the U.S. border. Finally gets over here, and when he gets over here, it's like creative doesn't have anything for Kevin. It's just kind of like, all right, cool. We've got Rey Mysterio working without a contract right now. We're going to do this eye for an eye match. We're going to try to work Dominic into it. How about if we just kind of throw Kevin Owens into it? Because, his last storyline was with Seth Rollins. Let's just kind of see if we can kind of squeeze him into this package as well. And this is something that we're going to talk about a little bit later on in this segment, but I think AEW does something fantastic that I wish WWE would kind of pick up on and try to do themselves. Because to me, you've got Seth Rollins, who I know we've kind of gone back and forth about the Monday Night Messiah character. I love it. I think it's great. I like what he's doing with Buddy Murphy. I like him having his own stable. I think it's fantastic. And I like the way he looks deranged and he looks out of his mind. I think it's great. Okay? But you don't need Kevin Owens attached to Seth Rollins. Let Seth Rollins have his match with Rey Mysterio. Let him have his match with Dominic. So I'm assuming Dominic's going to get some work in on Sunday with this pay-per-view. Let them do their thing. And Kevin Owens can either go on and do something else, work with somebody else, or you can have Kevin Owens just kind of sitting in the wings waiting so he can get back at Seth Rollins. But he doesn't need to be tied to Seth Rollins, especially not right now. What's Bobby Lashley doing? Bobby Lashley isn't doing a whole lot. Why can't you have Kevin Owens and Bobby Lashley doing something? I feel like if creative really got creative, they could come up with some creative storylines here for a guy like Kevin Owens, and instead they just kind of throw stuff at the wall, and if it sticks, it sticks. I don't know if you picked up on that or not.
Absolutely. And this week, as I jotted down my notes on WWE and AEW, I jotted down two names, and I wrote down Kevin Owens, and I wrote down Kenny Omega. And the reason why I wrote those names down is, and I'm like, how do you not have these two individuals in top flight, amazing storylines going back and forth with top echelon, better wrestlers? And it's just befuddling because, yeah, Kevin Owens has been kind of in a situation where, his momentum keeps getting halted because of injuries and situations in which he decides to take time away. So it's a fascinating look at a wrestler that has supreme talent, is a main event guy. You got to remember when he debuted, he got to, pop up powerbomb John Cena. And his ascent has been really interesting in that, arguably his top feud was with Chris Jericho, but that didn't really resonate. And I think that metaphorically, his run ended when he got speared by Goldberg. And it's so fascinating, psychologically when you see that a guy that, was the champion basically gets destroyed by an older veteran. That's not what's supposed to happen in wrestling. It really is supposed to be the other way around, where Goldberg comes in, flash and does a bunch of shit to Kevin Owens beforehand, and then Kevin Owens rides the momentum, gets the W in the payoff, and then goes forward and becomes a bigger star. Not reverting back to Goldberg to get 3 awful matches to put him over. That is ridiculous, and really, Kevin Owens hasn't recovered. Now, this is an unbelievable performer, somebody that has personality, that you really love to hate him as a heel, and you'd love to cheer him as somebody that's popular, but these stop and starts and the way that he's utilized, absolutely, you're right, and it's a shame. And we'll talk about it later. I couldn't believe what I saw on AEW, and I'm starting to agree with those online that are critiquing Kenny Omega's run. And we talked about it last week, but I have more on it this week later on when we talk about AEW. But Kevin Owens deserves to be in top flight intercontinental matches with AJ Styles, U.S. title matches. He deserves to be in the mix of something amazing, even if it's the lowest level. Pair him up with one of his boys and give him a tag run. But whatever he's doing now is not worthy of his talent, and it's a shame, a real shame, especially when the airtime is so, there's just not a lot of it compared to how many wrestlers you got.
It's funny. I watched the, how FS1 will air different wrestling events that have
past
taken place.
Ones, yep.
I watched the 2016 Survivor Series on Tuesday night. I watched that.
Yeah.
And Kevin Owens was involved in that. Chris Jericho was involved in that. AJ Styles was involved in that. Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, Shane McMahon was involved in that. All those guys were involved in that match. And Kevin Owens was one of the best guys in that match. His walk to the ring, his in-ring persona, just what he commanded when he was in the ring was fantastic. And you just don't necessarily get that right now. And again, it's a lot of stop and starts. It's, hey, we're going to have you be a heel. No, now we're going to have you be a face. No, wait, hold on. We need you to go back and be a heel again for, 2 weeks. And then we're going to turn you back into a face.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating. It's hard for fans to connect with a character when I don't even think the character knows what they're supposed to be. And you talked about Goldberg, and you talked about Goldberg setting up with Kevin Owens here. And Goldberg was on that Survivor Series episode. It was Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar. And I know I hammer Brock Lesnar a lot, but I took something out of this rewatch. And maybe, I don't know, we do so many podcasts, and you're so busy with doing the Lions and Sports Illustrated and everything like that. But maybe we should try to set something up where we do a rewatch, because rewatching that Survivor Series, I realized that Brock Lesnar made Bill Goldberg look amazing. Mm-hmm. That was a very short match. I think it was maybe 90 seconds. But Goldberg sold so hard Lesnar sold so hard for Goldberg in that match. Goldberg looked amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I don't give Brock Lesnar enough credit. I usually hammer him because I hate how he shows up. I hate how he takes the spotlight. He only wrestles in big events and doesn't really put anybody over. I'm wrong. He totally put somebody over here. Yep. He put Bill Goldberg over in this match. Goldberg looked like a freaking machine. Goldberg was blowing up in the first 20 seconds of this match and was able to hang on for roughly another 70 and then get the pin. And he did it by annihilating Brock Lesnar. Lesnar helped him out so much in this match. It was only 90 seconds, but helped him out so much. I don't give him enough credit. And I just, speaking about Kevin Owens and how it ties in with Goldberg, I mean, you now have Goldberg who then gets basically free reign on Kevin Owens in a couple matches and just kind of squashes Kevin Owens, halts all of his progress that he had going on. This is back in 2016. We're now in 2020. So 4 years later, what are we doing? It just, to me, Kevin Owens is a guy who really and truly, if you want to compare it to boats, right now he's a rudderless ship, but he is the equivalent to what a massive yacht could be.
Yes.
He doesn't get the time.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, and then to hear AJ Styles ripping on Paul Heyman, calling him a liar, and I can't wait to see how, when Gallows and Anderson, I think it is going to be this Friday, it will be an opportunity. I think it's Friday or Saturday, their no compete clause ends, and so then they're going to start, hitting the podcast circuit, and they're going to start sharing stories, and I want
Actually, it ended on July 15th.
Oh, it already ended. Nice.
Don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if they show up for Slammiversary, which I believe is going to take place on Saturday. the 18th. Yeah, so it'll be Slammiversary takes place on the 18th. Don't be surprised if they show up on Slammiversary, which is TNA, now Impact Wrestling. And don't be surprised if the hottest thing to hit the airwaves besides this podcast right here, thank you all for listening, will be that Gallows and Anderson podcast.
Absolutely. And you just got to realize that right now it's kind of an interesting time in WWE and AEW without fans and things like that. One company is doing a little bit better. The other just seems to be, floundering. And is it one of those things where there's just too many writers, too many ideas, and you're just scrambling, to try and get stuff on the air and trying to be unique when you really don't have to reinvent the wheel? That's the part. You got wrestlers. Just put on wrestling matches. Karaoke and all these backstage. Yes, they deserve to be in the mix. The additional stuff, you know what I mean? And I know Vince is trying to compete and get eyes, but this is not the way to do it. What people talk about ferociously is stories and wrestling. You don't want the world to be talking about how awful your segments are. And I just think we're talking more and more like that because the product just hasn't been good enough. And I'm surprised with the level of talent that you have and the level of producers that you have in the back, guys that have won world titles, guys that have been in the mix. I don't get it. It's just kind of like one of those things where, if Vince McMahon is on top and he's listening to Bruce Pritchard, who else is in the mix here giving ideas, and who are you giving these opportunities to give ideas? They're not the best. I just think that you just got to go back to basics. Wrestlers wrestle, tell great stories in the ring, and let's keep it moving. But whatever they're trying to do with this whole entertainment side of it, I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't think like you said, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's professional wrestling. It should be professional wrestling. I understand that there's an entertainment side to it, but I think the entertainment side comes out with the personality of the wrestlers. You don't have to try to fit square pegs into round holes because it just doesn't work. You've seen it time and time again. With Raw and SmackDown in NXT, was there anything else that really stood out to you, or that you really were like, man, that was either great, or man, that was a total miss? No,
nothing else. I just felt like, I'm looking forward to now the pay-per-view, some of the payoffs. I just felt like the build-up was okay. Not great if you were a casual fan and you were looking at some of the card in terms of Extreme Rules. Some of the interesting matchups are there, but I don't think that the go-home shows did anything to make you absolutely must-see this card. So it'll be a good card, a decent card, but the week of programming in WWE, we can move on because a lot more of the meaty stuff happened on AEW because you got some potential character changes, you got decent in-ring promos, and you got a main event that left some room for criticism as well. So I'm ready to talk about AEW, and the first topic that both you and I definitely saw was, a further evaluation of Cody Rhodes and his character. It's interesting the way in which they're going about it, a manner in which you have this wrestler, this talented wrestler that's wrestling regularly, and it showed that he was very frustrated, and could there be this heel turn that's taking place with Cody Rhodes just based on the match that we saw this past Wednesday. And so it was very fascinating, an interesting look at how Cody Rhodes handles, some adversity. And could he be getting frustrated? Could he be getting, to the point where he doesn't want to be the nice guy anymore? Does he want to be, more of a heel character? So in my mind, I thought that opening match that they had on Fight for the Fallen was pretty interesting. It was good. It just wasn't, in my mind, I was expecting a lot of A matches. And overall with AEW, you got a lot of B+ action. It's not bad, entertaining, but for a show that you're billing to be pay-per-view quality, I was looking for pay-per-view production, pay-per-view execution, and you just fell a little bit short in my mind. But at least if Cody Rhodes and Kenny Omega are starting to potentially have character development going on, I was cool with it.
So watching this this opening match on AEW's Dynamite Fight for the Fallen, whatever we're going to call it, while this was unfolding, I was messaging with Putty, because he's a huge wrestling fan and he absolutely loves AEW, and he brought up this match. We discussed this match. We didn't discuss it at length, but we went back and forth. Now, he wasn't a huge fan of this match. It doesn't sound like you were a massive fan of this match. I myself was really impressed with Sonny Kiss. I thought he performed very, very well. I thought what you have here is you've got the announcers telling a story that is happening in the ring. And I next week, I want you to pay a little bit closer attention, because listen to what the announcers are saying and listen to how they're trying to guide this story, and then watch Cody's reaction. Because what you have here is, at some point, you're going to have this character just flip, whether he's going to turn on Arn Anderson or whether he's just going to become a total badass and become a heel. At some point, Cody Rhodes, something's going to happen to him where his whole entire demeanor is going to be 180 degrees in the opposite direction. And I just want you to listen next week. Listen to what the announcers say and how they deliver it and how it's packaged and presented to you. Similarly, you brought up Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega had a match this week. It was a 6-way tag match between Jurassic Express versus Being the Elite. And at the end of the match, Kenny Omega ends up climbing on top of I don't believe it was Marco Stunt. It might have been what is it? Jungle Boy Jack Perry. Climbs on top of him and starts giving him right hand after right hand after right hand after he had already won the match.
No, it was it was the littler wrestler. It was the smaller guy.
So
sure.
Marco Stunt. So it was Marco Stunt.
It was Marco Stunt, guaranteed, because everyone was like, "Oh my god!" And I was looking at that and seeing, because it was noticeable. It was one of the first times I actually paid attention to Marco Stunt to see his in-ring work. It was good, but yeah, Kenny Omega took his liberties and surprised everybody, because the Young Bucks had to get him off of him, and then they were teasing his menacing look. It was interesting.
It was like, so Kenny Omega comes out earlier and they try to have this peace offering with FTR, and we're going to discuss FTR next. But they try to have this peace offering with FTR, and Kenny Omega gives him a Miller Lite with the light part crossed out. I thought that was kind of cute and funny. And they dumped the beer on him. So Kenny Omega's now a little bit pissed.
Yep.
Later on in the episode, or later on in this match, what you get is you get FTR going to the back bar area where Hangman Page is sitting there drinking some whiskey, and they basically sit down with Hangman Page, which now I think has you questioning what the hell's going on. And we've talked about them splitting up at some point. We've talked about Hangman going his own direction. We've talked about Kenny kind of going his own direction. And we've also last week discussed what is going on with this tag team, because it feels, to me at least, it feels like they've almost overstayed their welcome. There's so many great tag teams in AEW. You don't necessarily need Hangman Page and you don't need Kenny Omega to have those belts. Those guys can go on to do other things. You've talked about it in the opening of this show, where Kenny Omega should be one of your top billed wrestlers in AEW, and sometimes he feels like he's a little bit of an afterthought. So does Kenny Omega go rogue, and does Kenny Omega now turn heel and maybe break away from the Elite, break away from Hangman Page? Because I think both you and I thought for sure Hangman Page was going to be the one who was going to turn heel here. But maybe they throw us a curveball. And would that curveball sit better with you if it was Kenny Omega being the one who was turning heel instead of Hangman Page?
Yeah, see, I looked at it differently, because this 6-man tag came on the heels following the tag match that featured FTR and the Lucha Brothers, and arguably two of the greatest tag teams in the world. And that match, had some botches, and it just didn't exactly flow right. It was a good match, entertaining, but it wasn't the crisp, A+ spectacular that we're all sitting here going, wow, you have to go back and rewatch this matchup. So it's kind of like one of those situations where that match might have needed a build-up, might have needed some, if there were house shows, kind of some training there. And that's what you get, unfortunately, when you don't have house shows. You don't get to work out more of in-ring chemistry, because I was excited for that match, and then it failed to deliver. And yeah, it's great, the whole dumping of the beer kind of thing, but then I don't know if you paid attention to the details. FTR goes to their car, and it looks like they can't start it. So
yes.
it was stupid, and I was like, okay, it dragged. So I was left going, And then, you got Kenny Omega, and then, like I said, I jotted down, I'm like, why is Kenny Omega in a 6-man tag? Why is Kenny Omega in this feud at all? Why is he being used this way? And I just kept saying to myself, I don't want to see Kenny Omega fighting a smaller wrestler. I just don't. I want to see him in the mix with the Brian Cage. I want to see him in the mix with the biggest stuff, even if it's with the likes of one of the Boricuas. I'll take one of those, top echelon stuff. This, I just feel like a waste of his time. Yeah, it's character development, and we're probably moving in that direction as he ascends in the company. But Kenny Omega in a 6-man tag against Jungle Boy and, the Luchasaurus and a smaller wrestler, Marco I was like, come on. It didn't hit right. It didn't feel right. Fine, you're using it as character development, but for me personally, I just feel like Kenny Omega is like one of the top 3 wrestlers in the world. This is so beneath him. It's just one of those things where if you got a top wrestler, put him in top flight stuff, but for him to go down this road of character development, I understand. And in the end, when he does eventually, if he is kind of conflicted or is a bad guy heel now, it'll probably, launch him into some great feuds down the road. But in my mind, I just thought it was a miss and a whiff and a waste of time. And so I didn't like that match. And I was kind of excited. Okay, let's move on from this and let's get to the main event.
So you had texted me as AEW was unfolding. And we briefly touched on FTR. And you talked about how when they went to their car after the interaction with the Elite, the car wouldn't start. They had a match with the Lucha Brothers, who are absolutely fantastic. One of the best, one of the premier tag teams in all of the world.
And the Lucha Brothers had the botches.
And right. And FTR is another tag team that is totally counter to what the Lucha Brothers do. And you took a lot of issue with this match. So run me through the mistakes that you caught and run me through why you feel like there's something that's just amiss here, whether it's with FTR or whether it's with the Lucha Brothers. Because I want to give you your time to really build this out, because I've noticed a couple things about FTR and their matches. Yeah. And I want to see if we're on the same page or if we're seeing things just a little bit different.
Well, I just focused on the botches. I just wanted a clean match. And I saw, there was, I think, a situation where one of the Lucha Brothers went for a sunset flip and just flew way over, And so you saw some small, look, at that pace, it's going to be pretty much impossible to just go. But I would just say that maybe that match needed a little bit more of psychology, just a tad, where it just kind of felt like it was move, and it just didn't really amount. And then for me, okay, obviously you saw the ending. I hated the fact that the ending was FTR takes the mask off the Lucha Brothers and it's a roll-up. That ending is not worthy of the match that you just had. It should have been a finishing move, boom, FTR gets the win, and they go forward. And I just thought that maybe, in theory, people thought that this match could have developed a chemistry, but it's sometimes when you're not familiar with a group, and this is why house shows are important, or dark matches or things like that, where you actually, face the same team over and over and over again. I feel like this match would have been better had these guys been in the ring with each other like 5-6 times before. For a match, it was good, a B+ match, but the expectation was this is a big-time match, 2 great tag teams, that it would have been flawless. And it was just kind of minor, little glitches that took place. And then the ending, like you said, with the key was ridiculous. FTR, in my mind, came out looking good in the manner in which they were presented. I just didn't like the ending. What would you think?
I think we're on the same track here. I think this match suffered from not having familiarity with each other. You have totally different styles here. The Lucha Brothers are, like you said, go, and they are all over the place all the time, which is fantastic. They're great matches. They're highly entertaining. Whereas FTR is a little bit more slow, a little bit more plodding, a little bit more methodical. It's a little bit more of a grappling style. So you have styles that are totally counterintuitive to what each other are. And a lot of times what that does is it makes for a fantastic match, because you've got two guys you have two sets of guys that are polar opposites, and it makes for an incredible feud and an incredible wrestling event. In this case, I think what you got was you had FTR not quite knowing what the Lucha Brothers were going to do, Lucha Brothers trying to get all their work in, and in the end, I think it was a match that felt a little bit sloppy. I think right now what FTR is suffering from, because I haven't really been impressed with a lot of their matches as of late, I think what they're suffering from is most of these guys in AEW have come up with each other through the indies, or have wrestled each other in AAA, or have wrestled each other in ROH or in Impact. They have familiarity with each other because they've done stuff in the past. FTR, I know that at one point they were indie darlings. And I know that at one point they came up through NXT. And then from NXT, they went to WWE, where they basically sat on the shelf and spoiled like rotten cabbage. Okay. It's been quite a few years since I think the guys in FTR have wrestled other wrestlers not doing a WWE style. And I think it's just going to take some time for them to get caught back up to where everybody else is, because WWE has its own style, the way that they do things, the way that matches are put together. That's why they have NXT. It's why a lot of guys have to go to NXT, have to go to the Performance Center, and have to learn how to, as they say, run the ropes. Even the ropes in WWE are totally different than just about any other organization on the planet. So everything in WWE is a little bit different. And I think FTR is just kind of a half a step slow right now with their matches. And it's just because they're trying to shake off that WWE ring rust and trying to get back out there and have these fantastic matches that everybody else is so caught up to speed doing, because they have that familiarity with each other.
Yeah, exactly. And I just can't wait to see how FTR evolves as they continue to get familiarity with AEW and some of the other tag teams. But I think both you and I will agree that FTR and Lucha Brothers got to do it again on a much bigger stage, and an opportunity maybe for a title on the line or something bigger. That's going to be more meaningful. Maybe just a television match in the middle of a card probably didn't hit home for either tag team. So now we get to Chris Jericho and Orange Cassidy. In my mind, I thought that it was a very interesting segment in regards to pushing the storyline forward. And I thought it was a good job. I felt like, okay, you know what? Chris Jericho is, highlighting ratings and doing his heel type thing. And then all of a sudden Orange Cassidy comes out. And after Jericho says, we're not having a rematch, and then all of a sudden a bunch of orange goo falls upon, the inner circle. And I thought it was well done. Obviously, it leads to the continuation, probably another match. In my mind, I don't really need to see another match between them, but I think in AEW, the storylines tend to go on just a little bit longer. So in my mind, I thought, okay, if this is how you're going to do it, some people online took offense because it's like all this work that Orange Cassidy would have done to orchestrate this is not on brand with his character. But I just think that, he doesn't have to stick to, his laissez-faire attitude all the time. And it made for an interesting segment, to have the towel with Orange Cassidy's face, to see how pissed off that Jericho was. I think if you're going to continue this feud, this was a nice way of doing it.
I was so entertained by this. I thought this was probably the best segment of the entire show.
Yeah.
Chris Jericho is fantastic at just about everything he does. He's up there cutting his promo. Then when he gets the goo dumped on him, the orange juice with the orange slices, he has orange slices in his hair. He starts yelling at his own guys, "You stupid idiots, get up, quit flopping around, get me a towel." And then they give him the towel, and it's Orange Cassidy's face on the towel. He does such a great job delivering everything. And then he goes to the announcer's desk, because what we have coming up next is the main event between Brian Cage and Jon Moxley, and Taz is needed for the assistance at the ring. So you now have Chris Jericho all fired up, smelling of orange juice, just covered in it, and him on commentary talking about what he just went through, and then doing the ring announcing, I thought was fantastic. I could listen to Chris Jericho be a ring announcer with two fish flopping around on the ring. I could listen to it for hours and be entertained, because he is so damn good. And I love the fact that they are pushing this forward. Again, I wasn't 100% sold on the match last week. I thought what the match did last week was it helped get Orange Cassidy over. Orange Cassidy is now probably at his highest level. I thought the match itself was a little bit boring and a little bit plotting, okay? But all that being said, I want to see something bigger. I want to see something better. And how we just talked about FTR needing to kind of run through the ropes a little bit, run through the paces with a couple different guys. I think with these two guys having one match already, it's going to be that much better the next time that they get in the ring. So I can't really wait to see it.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm excited to see the payoff, and maybe you consider, because of the fact that Jericho's starting to put Cassidy over, maybe Cassidy gets some kind of fluky win, and you call it a day. But I can't wait to see how this evolves going forward, and I wanted to agree with you. Jericho on the mic is awesome, and it was kind of funny. It was entertaining, and that's all you could ask for. And then we get to the main event, and finally we get to see the payoff of Brian Cage, this monster, against Moxley. And it was what it was. It was a brawl. It was great. Now, The way in which I'll describe my thoughts on it is this. The manner in which they did was fine. They protect Brian Cage, shows that Taz cares about his client. You still show that Brian Cage is a monster who now is going to shift potentially to a feud with Darby Allin, who was injured in a match with Brian Cage. And so the critiques that came out after this match, I believe in, which is if you're going to have Brian Cage lose to Moxley with the interference after from Darby Allin, why didn't you just have Darby Allin cost Cage the match? And you still protect Cage. You have Moxley look like a monster, and that could have been the way in which the feud would have gone forward. But that would have been probably the traditional easy approach. I think they could have went down that road. But to have Brian Cage have his manager throw in the towel, it's fine because you keep the heat. Brian Cage still looks like a monster. But in my mind, it just kind of diminishes him a little bit. You know, I know that he would never give up, but when your manager gives up for you, what does that say? You know, I know the others will say, oh, he cares about and things like that, but bottom line, you could have actually had it where Brian Cage passes out and doesn't tap out, and Moxley looks like an even bigger monster. Cage looks like a legend because he doesn't tap out. The announcers could have really hit home. This guy has a broken bicep. You monster, let it go, let it go. He's passed out, and you could have had it. Both guys walk away a little bit stronger had they played it a little differently. The way they played it was fine, but you know, I just kind of am like, Darby Allin, Cage. I kind of want to see more of Cage and Moxley because Brian Cage looks the part. He looks the part of a champion. I'm like, holy cow, let's get this guy a stable. Let's get Taz a stable, maybe with an EC3, some bigger dudes, and formulate some kind of monster group in AEW. But I just became a bigger fan, and I was a fan already. I was a bigger fan of Brian Cage after the main event.
So something I noticed, right? I thought it was a very good main event. And I didn't necessarily have a problem with Taz throwing the towel in. I think what you do is you kind of sow a seed for later on when Brian Cage has to break away from Taz. That could be the one thing that never sat right with Brian Cage. You didn't believe enough in me. You threw the towel in when I could have won a championship. But what I noticed that AEW does, and they do it really, really well, and this is something that I wish that WWE would do, is you now have one wrestler, Brian Cage, in a multi-layered feud with either Darby Allin or Jon Moxley. Because the Jon Moxley angle doesn't necessarily have to end, but you also now have this jump off with Darby Allin. And I think you have some watching how everything kind of unfolded, you have some I would say Jon Moxley and Darby Allin don't necessarily trust each other. There's a little bit of an uneasiness there. So you kind of now have this triangle where you can kind of build stories off of it, and you can build multiple stories. And I think that's the one thing that AEW does really, really well, is they are excellent at telling stories and letting the guys go out there and portray this in the way that their character needs to portray it to get it over, to make it believable. I thought this was great. I thought them hearkening back to Darby Allin getting injured in the Casino Battle Royal, I thought it was great. And I thought him coming in and hitting him with his skateboard was awesome. And then the way that Darby Allin and Jon Moxley kind of wanted to give each other daps, but not really, I thought that was a nice little touch as well. Overall, I thought AEW did a really, really good job on Wednesday. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a good 2 hours, fast-paced. Everything kind of moved along and things like that. But I just think that the show kind of took a step back based on expectations, where I was looking for an A++ show, and you got a little bit of things that could have been done differently. So in my mind, I gave it a B+, but it was enjoyable. It kept my attention, and that was the show I watched over NXT. So in my mind, AEW is doing a good job of character development, and we didn't even get to the fact that Vicky Guerrero's back. I thought that was awesome.
True.
Her promo was epic. You were like, oh, this is perfect. What a perfect way to reintroduce her back as a manager. And I like AEW taking the stance of having some more managers. It's just classic. And so I think with AEW, the thing that I think you and I are both looking for now is a company that's been around now for a couple years. We want them to take kind of that next step forward and tighten things up, crisply do things in the ring, handle the promos well, kind of ride some more momentum and get back up there. I feel like AEW's taking just a slight step back in terms of execution, and I'm not certain why, especially with the tag team division and the way they're so loose with the rules. execution of moves and matches. And then, unfortunately, you can't put on women's matches that kind of don't make sense. I mean, squash matches are fine with Brandy Rhodes, but it doesn't add anything to that card. It didn't need to be there. So that's why it had the potential to be an A+ card, but shook out to me to be a B+ card. So in my mind, it's fine. You keep it moving, you go forward, and you keep trucking along. But if you're going to, AEW has taken a 3-week loss consecutively to NXT, and I can start to see why, because NXT is starting to bring some noise and some talent. So for AEW, don't take your foot off the gas. Keep it moving forward, and let's see what happens. So now here we are. We are going to preview Extreme Rules WWE. I got, I believe, a 5.5 to 4.5 lead over Adam. I got to hold on and make sure that I keep my title as the best prognosticator in the world of professional wrestling. All right, let's go down this card, cuz who's fighting who at Extreme Rules this Sunday, WWE Network, 7 o'clock.
Now, just mind you, card is always subject to change. This is what we have going into this recording right now, which is very, very late in the week. So things can change either Friday night or Saturday afternoon. So bear with us. Normally we get these right, but sometimes they do kind of tweak a little bit. First off, we've got Braun Strowman, who is the champion, taking on Bray Wyatt in a Wyatt swamp fight. Now, this is a non-title match. Who do you have winning this one?
See, the non-title match throws me off. And because it's named after somebody, I don't think you're going to have Braun Strowman win a Wyatt match. So give me Bray Wyatt.
I'm going to go with Bray Wyatt as well. Again, I don't know how you have Braun win a Wyatt match, but, also Braun just beat Bray Wyatt. So what do we have here? I think, you go 1-1, and then you have your rubber match at SummerSlam is what you're going to get.
You got it.
You got the WWE Championship, Drew McIntyre versus Dolph Ziggler. Now, this stipulation will be announced, I believe, the day of. So just before the match gets started, we'll know what is going to happen here. Drew McIntyre, Dolph Ziggler. I think I know which direction you're going. I've already got the name down. You just need to say it for me.
In my mind, it's going to be probably one of the good matches, I think, on the card. I'm looking forward to it, but yeah, no doubt about it. Drew McIntyre wins it, walks out the champ.
Yeah, I'm going to say Drew as well. Now, we've got the Raw Women's Championship, Asuka versus Sasha Banks. Now, this is probably one of the matches that I have the hardest time with because I'm not 100% sure what they want to do with Sasha Banks, and I'm not 100% sure if they believe in Asuka. In this case, I'm going to go with Asuka because I could see some long-term storytelling where you get Kairi Sane versus Asuka at SummerSlam.
Yeah, it's really tough. Because you could see a situation in which Sasha takes it over, but I feel like Asuka is going to have a nice long reign, and she needs to kind of, continue this. I mean, it's really tough, but for me, I'm not seeing a whole heck of a lot of title changes at this point in time, so for me, give me Asuka.
Now we have the SmackDown Women's Championship. Bayley is the champion taking on Nikki Cross. I'm going to go Bayley in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Give me Bayley.
We've got Rey Mysterio versus Seth Rollins. This is the eye for an eye match. I think in this match, you're going to get a little bit of Dominic mixed in. I also struggle with this one. Does Seth Rollins win and continue? Or does Rey Mysterio get vengeance and does he harm Seth Rollins? Where do we go with this? I'm not 100% sure. I think Dominic is the deciding factor in all of it. And I'm going to go Rey Mysterio for a improbable win.
See, that's interesting. Do you continue to have Seth Rollins go down this road of losing and going down this deep, dark well? I don't see it. I just don't think the matchup dictates that Rey Mysterio wins. So in my mind, give me Seth Rollins for the victory.
All right. We'll see what happens there. That one's going to be interesting. Like I said, I struggled with picking Rey. I just think that Dominic might be the deciding factor. Now we've got the United States Championship. We've got Apollo Crews taking on MVP for that brand new fancy U.S. Championship belt. Who do you see winning this one?
Oh, man. Could you see MVP taking it over and having a heel situation go on? See, this is a problem with, WWE, is that I think in this situation, both guys are deserving of a win. So it's actually, a good matchup. But in my mind, oh, man. You know what? I'll think outside the box. My heart tells me that it's going to be Apollo Crews, but something along the lines of MVP. If he creates his own belt, why not pay it off? So give me MVP for a new title reign and maybe have Apollo Crews get it back at a later time. New champ,
weird.
baby.
I'm in the same spot as you, man, because my heart says Apollo Crews, or my head says Apollo Crews, but my heart says MVP because he created that belt. And we don't have a title change at all taking place on this card as of now. So this could be the one title change that you do get. So I'm going to go MVP. Now we've got the SmackDown Tag Team Championship. We've got the New Day taking on Nakamura and Cesaro in a tables match. Who do you see winning this one?
You know, if we're wrong, we could see Nakamura winning a title. But in my mind, the New Day has just been awesome. So give me the New Day to take it down and handle their business.
Yeah, I think the New Day get a win here as well. I think what you'll get is on the SmackDown after this, you'll get a little bit of a follow-up brawl between these two. Now we've got Jeff Hardy taking on Sheamus in a bar fight. Who wins this one?
Yeah, this is a tough one. You know, Jeff, I see more of the same. I mean, do you give Jeff Hardy the victory back? But this seems like it's a perfect setup for Sheamus to continue his run. I mean, WWE doesn't make any sense because you would think that Sheamus needs to continue his run, but on the other end, you could just give it to Jeff Hardy. So I have no clue. I think Jeff Hardy needs it more, but Sheamus is the bigger, badder fighter. So give me Sheamus.
I'm going to go Jeff Hardy just to be different. I don't know. I mean, this is a card where we pick really similarly throughout all of it. I'll do a quick rundown and a recap. So we both have Bray Wyatt beating Braun Strowman in a Wyatt Swamp fight, non-title match. We both have Drew McIntyre retaining his WWE Championship with that stipulation to be held later by Dolph Ziggler. We've got Asuka retaining her belt over Sasha Banks. We've got Bayley retaining her belt over Nikki Cross. Now, we differ with Seth Rollins versus Rey Mysterio in the eye for an eye match. I've got Rey Mysterio. You have Seth Rollins. We both are going to go with MVP. We're going to roll the dice here, and we're going to roll the dice and see if MVP gets a win over Apollo Crews. SmackDown Tag Team Championship, we've got the New Day retaining, and then we differ with Jeff Hardy versus Sheamus. I've got Hardy. You've got Sheamus. As of right now, you hold a very slim 1-point lead, 5.5 to 4.5. in our predictions results.
Ooh, this one has a real strong chance. If you guys are wanting to take action on our podcast, I would bet the tie. I think there's an opportunity that Seth wins and Adam gets it with Jeff Hardy. There's a strong chance of a tie here, baby. Look forward to seeing how this plays out. I could get the extreme W if it's Sheamus and if it's the old guard. If it's Sheamus and Seth Rollins, the Doc will pull ahead. So I'm going to be rooting hard. I can't wait to see how Extreme Rules plays out. Always something freaky happens. Always a couple moments here and there that just leave you going, holy shit. And I wonder if they pipe that in. That'll be awesome. As AEW and WWE have been piping in crowd noise as of late. All right, cuz, hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. Tell me the 2 or 3 biggest things that caught your attention in the world of professional wrestling.
Well, do you remember Sonny? Well, Tammy Lynn Snitch has been arrested yet again. On Monday, Snitch was arrested for the following charges: eluding a police officer, contempt, violate domestic violence restraining order, operating a motor vehicle during her second license suspension. So she's a hot mess. Snitch was on parole after being released from prison earlier this year. It's not currently known whether or not the arrest will affect her parole, but this is the 5th time she's been arrested since 2011.
Sheesh.
Needs to stay away from the police. Former WWE World Champion and AEW World Champion Chris Jericho has commented on which WWE superstars he struggled to work with. Speaking on his latest YouTube live stream, Jericho named Titus O'Neil and Tyson Tamako as having the moves that he wasn't completely comfortable taking. He said Christian's bodyguard was Tyson Tomko. His finish was very hard to take. Titus O'Neil, too. The guy would just throw you with no direction and with no care on how you were going to land. Now, however, the thing that was weird that came out of all of this was he disagrees on Ryback, who has a bad rap for being a bad worker. He said Ryback was not unsafe. Ryback was a great worker, and whomever says he's unsafe had a different experience than I. I never had a problem with Ryback, ever. I thought he was a really, really good worker. Now, Charlotte, on a Twitter rant, explains why she stepped away from the ring for some time. She has some messed up titties. One boob is giving her silicone poisoning, and she needs to get it fixed, and she needs some time to recover. Also, Rusev has been diagnosed and has tested positive with COVID-19. He announced that while he was on a Twitch live stream. And finally, in a recent interview with TalkSports, Cody alludes to what may have prevented CM Punk from joining AEW. And it sounds like it comes down to dollars and protecting the company as a whole. Cody said, I don't want a situation that happened with WCW or Jim Crockett Promotions where we think we're flying so high that we can do anything. No, this is a business and we have to turn a profit. The fact that we're able to turn a profit as a company within only 2 years of being alive, very few other companies within wrestling, it's really limited. You cannot count on one hand who's been able to do that versus who has bled money. But in this situation, the negotiations, I don't think they ever got too serious. Cody continued, because the price tag became a lot more justifiable if you're genuinely interested in what we're doing at high speed and what we're doing. And again, that's not even specific to him, just in general. If the passion is not there, the money is not there. So what it sounds like is CM Punk was kind of looking for a bit of a payday. Cody Rhodes said, cool, if you're into it, this is what we need from you. And CM Punk was like, I'll think about it. And just, it never really got to that level. Also, Cody Rhodes is taking this entire thing with AEW from a business standpoint. You have to protect the business that you're working for, and that's AEW. And like you said, the fact that they're able to turn a profit in only 2 years is absolutely incredible. That's all I got for you for this week's news and notes.
A massive wrestling podcast this week. I always love turning on the microphone and talking professional wrestling with my guy. And like you said, if there's something in a rewatch that you want to bring to the table, let's talk about it. Tell me maybe you can just do a quick takeaway from a rewatch that, Adam's Nugget in regards to something that popped up to refresh. Because, yeah, wrestling history is as big a market right now as there ever has been. I mean, Conrad Thompson just basically said, hey, I'm going to put together a team and let's just bring back old stories and talk about all the shit that happened in the past with all the cool stories. And he's doing 5 podcasts a week with, Arn Anderson, with the likes of Eric Bischoff, JR, and all he's doing is just recapping the history of professional wrestling, as you are with the history of the Detroit Lions, going back and visiting the 2012 NFL season with the Lions in the Throwback podcast. Make sure you check out Adam's 2 other podcasts that he drops on the network, the Throwback and the Practice Squad. Great part of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. If you agreed or disagreed, or you have a completely different take on AEW or WWE, if you liked the karaoke segment, if you thought it was entertaining and you liked SmackDown, let us know. It's always fun to debate and banter everything going on in the world of professional wrestling. Make sure, don't miss out on the daily content of the Detroit Sports Podcast. All you got to do in this day and age, it's so easy. You just go to your favorite place where you listen to podcasts, search 3 words, Detroit Sports Podcast. Our information will pop up. You hit that subscribe button, and then our daily content will find you, where we talk about the Detroit Lions, the Tigers, Wings, Pistons. We talk daily about the Michigan football program, professional wrestling. There's so much for you to digest, and you don't have to do any extra work once you subscribe. The content will find you. Thanks so much again, cuz. Look forward to broadcasting next week. Stay tuned for the latest edition of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast. Drops every Friday on the DSP Network.